Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Realization Hub. My name is Michelle, and I'm an intuitive healer, energy healer, channeler, and astrologer who loves to teach sensitive and awakened leaders and creatives how to manage their energy, develop their intuition, and navigate their personal growth, their relationships, their spiritual transformations with lots of ease and empowerment and clarity. I'm happy to be connecting with you today. Today's energy update is going to be for the Libra full moon, which is going to be on April 1st at 4:11 p.m. Hawaii time on a Wednesday. And I'll be doing a little review over the energy leading up to this, as well as talking about this full moon and just anything else that wants to come through about this message. How exciting. So let's get started with this full moon. Um, just right off the bat, this full moon is interesting in the way that it works out for us. It does bring up relational themes. It does bring up themes about making decisions. It can bring up themes about discipline, boundaries, the way we do our work in a way that is more contained or protected in some way. And it's a little funny, this full moon, the vibe of this full moon is a little weird, a little funny, but things work out. Things work out just fine, but the way they work out might be a little interesting. Before we hop into the astrology of the full moon and I break down the energy of the full moon, I want to talk a little bit about like what we've just been through energetically, just as a way to kind of anchor into this present moment here. And so one of the things I want to say is just congratulations to everyone. You made it through eclipse season. We had a solar eclipse in Aquarius on February 17th. We had a total lunar eclipse in Virgo on March 3rd. And then we had a new moon in Pisces on March 18th. And that's when we closed out eclipse season. And during eclipse season, we had Mercury retrograde in Pisces in its detriment. In its fall. Mercury in Pisces in its fall retrograde. And then, you know, first of all, let's just talk about that. Let's just talk about this part of the year and what was shifting. I mean, collectively, we can we can point out some major things that happened during that time. Um, for example, the supreme leader of Iran was assassinated. There was an increase in Iran tensions with US and Iran and conflicts and the crisis with oil and the ripple effect of that into everyone's lives all around the world on so many different levels. And amongst that, there was other chaotic, messy things going on collectively. But that was like the main thing that was happening, and we continued to see just ridiculous, messy things play out in the world, right? Hard to witness, hard to process. In fact, all of this was happening within Pisces season, these eclipses leading up to the new moon. And it wasn't until right after that new moon in Pisces where we hopped into Aries season. And I just want to talk about that a little bit because a lot of people reported feeling exhausted during Pisces season. And I just wanted to point that out. Pisces season can be very exhausting, especially when there is heightened conflict happening in the world, heightened chaos happening in the world. Pisces is a sign that's very opened and porous to collective energies. And so, if you were one of those people that were feeling really tired, exhausted, um, messy, all over the place, like having a hard time grounding and being in your body and just kind of disassociating a lot, feeling just foggy and feeling all those delays and just kind of that slow inward kind of experience. That was the retrograde in Pisces and all the shifts and changes that were happening during Pisces season. It wasn't just you as a person going through a bunch of nonsense. It was also you experiencing the world, the collective, what the collective was feeling, and so you could have felt the collective being really burnt out, the collective being exhausted and tired. And you know what it was like? It was kind of like that feeling you get right before you get a second wind. It's kind of like that slow drag feeling that you feel right before you get that second wind, and then you finally have some energy to, put back into your world again. But Pisces season was slow, it was foggy, it was messy, it was um, ungrounded. It was kind of ridiculous, when you were looking at the global events that were occurring. Um, a lot of it didn't make sense. It required a lot of us to just kind of surrender and trust and not really know what to do, how to process it, how to handle it, what it meant for us as individuals. Um, and so I just want to like give everyone a high five for making it through that particular season. That wasn't an energetically easy season to go through. And maybe you were one of those people where, on a personal level, maybe it was fairly smooth. Maybe you're one of those people that, on a personal level, it was crazy. It was chaotic. It was messy on some level. I can tell you what, it kind of felt like being in an ocean when there's like rip tides that keep pulling you out into the ocean, but you're trying to get on the shoreline. Like you're desperately trying to get on the shoreline. You're trying to get out of the ocean. You're trying to get grounded. You're trying to get a grip, like on your day-to-day routines. You're trying to get a grip on like your clarity, your mental focus. You're trying to get a grip and like just move forward on some level, and you're not. You just keep being pulled back and pulled back and pulled back, and you're not just getting delays, you're just getting behind, and you're tired and you're like swimming against the current, and it's like, wait, what am I doing in here? I just think that was a very confusing time energetically for everyone. Now, for my little cozy corner of realization hub, I work with sensitive people that are going through a spiritual transformation. They're embodying themselves, and they're embodying a deeper purpose. They're aligning their lives. They're conscious creators. And so for many of us, it was like a spiritual incubation period. It's that resting time before there's more of a birth and a new version of you that is coming out into the world to take action on some things that's more assertive, that is more aligned with direct purpose into the world. And so that whole like Mercury retrograde eclipse season, even after Mercury retrograde, even now, people are still feeling fatigued and tired. And I wanted to point that out. I wanted to point that out astrologically, like why are we still feeling kind of tired and slow right now? And we still have Mercury in Pisces. Mercury is, us and our ability to translate and think and process and focus and pay attention to details. And it rules things like our transit and how we navigate. Transit and travel and writing, teaching, speaking, thinking, emails, technology, all of that. And it's still in Pisces. It's still in its fall in Pisces, which means it has to work extra, extra hard to get those mercurial things done. And, at this point, everyone's getting a taste of what it feels like to be a Pisces, because you can feel like really ungrounded sometimes. You can like kind of zone out. You can be kind of in dreamy dreamland. You can be literally just confused, or you might interpret something completely different. It reminds me of like when people are speaking to you, like their words are saying something, but you feel something different, and it's kind of confusing. You're like, wait, you said this, but the energy was like this, or I see this is happening, but my intuition is telling me this, and this is not matching, and this is weird. And it can be a little bit like that. Hard to focus, hard to feel grounded. Great for creativity, great for imagination, great for opening up your intuition and, kind of sensing what's happening energetically for you. But even then, I notice it's a bit foggy right now, and that is because Mercury it's just not functioning at its best in Pisces. And so Mercury is direct, which that's better than it being retrograde. When it was retrograde, for example, we had major delays in airports, in the United States. We had ongoing issues with Homeland Security, the Department of Homeland and Security, TSA, um, Congress trying to make budgeting deals and avoid, just a lot of politics going on around it. And that was causing delays, that was causing threats of airport shutdowns. That was causing kind of a ruckus around our airports. And even when Mercury stationed direct, that's about the time when Trump was starting to put ICE into the airports alongside TSA or to replace TSA. It's still all very confusing and it doesn't make sense. So that is kind of where we're at with Mercury and Pisces. So if you're still feeling foggy, if you're still feeling tired, if you're still having a hard time focusing, that's why Mercury will pass its shadow period around April 9th. I think that's when I've written it down. Around April 9th. Yes, that is when Mercury is going to be coming out of its shadow, which just means that when Mercury started its retrograde, which was, I believe, around, the later degrees of Pisces. That's when it started retrograde. It went all the way back to 8 degrees of Pisces, and now it's got to, go direct again over its footsteps back to the later degrees of Pisces. And then once it passes that degree point, which is going to be April 9th, that's when we'll actually feel like maybe mentally we're kind of moving forward a little bit more. We're not feeling so like pulled back and delayed and like maybe we're catching up to where we were like over a month ago. And then I believe it's going to be, yes, April 14th is when Mercury goes into Aries. Okay. And so Mercury going into Aries is going to be a shift for us mentally. We're going to be less of that foggy fog, dreamy, kind of confusing energy, like difficulty processing, difficulty speaking, difficulty focusing, difficulty feeling grounded, difficulty with, transit, technology, things like that. It'll be less messy and it'll be a little bit more direct, focused, being able to advocate for yourself a little bit more. Um, so, yeah, we'll get into that, but I just want to give you the heads up that a lot of the reason why we're still exhausted, feeling exhausted, is Mercury is in Pisces. I also will point out that, Mars is also in Pisces. Now, Mars is the ruler of Aries. We're currently in Aries season. So the fact that Mars is in Pisces means that we're really feeling this energy of Pisces still. So even though we're out of Pisces season, we're still in this like watery, foggy kind of energy. We're still in this space of having to kind of be fluid and adaptable and um, intuitive with how we accomplish our goals, how we direct our energy. It might feel a little bit more tired or passive or exhausted or confusing, or like we kind of have to surrender or trust the process, listen to our intuition a little bit more, trust kind of like our soul's journey in the process of achieving our goals or moving through challenges. And so that's why we may be feeling a little bit tired, and still a little bit tired, um, leading up to April. And I'm just kind of looking at my notes here, looking at when, Mars moves into Aries on April 9th. So April 9th is going to be a big day. I mean, that's when Mercury comes out of its shadow period. And that's when Mars moves into Aries, and we'll be feeling more of that external energy, more of our masculine energy, where we can be a lot more direct with our action, a lot more direct and hopefully focused with our action. Um, okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is that during this time of Mercury retrograde, we had some big stuff happening. Mercury was in Pisces. Pisces is a water sign. One of the things that happened to me in my personal life locally was during that retrograde, I had family coming to visit, which is a very retrograde kind of experience where you're like going back into your past and seeing someone from your past. And um, Mercury retrograde happened to be retrograding over my moon sign. And my moon sign represents, your moon sign can represent your relationship to your mother, can also represent your home and family. And, I had my family visiting me, I had my mother visiting me. We spent some days together while they were on the island with me. And right as they were about to leave, this huge storm came into Hawaii. The Kona Low storm is what it's called. And it's actually a storm that comes in every year around the same time. And it hits the island in a different way than the weather usually does. And this year was historical. Hawaii happened to have catastrophic flooding occurring across all the islands. In fact, Oahu and Maui got hit the hardest. Um, about 230 people had to be rescued from the flooding areas, and thousands of people were evacuated. It was the worst flooding that Hawaii has experienced in 20 years. The roads were ripped up, houses were destroyed. There's a massive cleanup happening, mud everywhere, brown water in the ocean. The dam on Oahu was at risk of breaking, which would have made the situation even worse. And so Hawaii got hit by storm after storm. It did not stop. The rain kept coming. They've had record-breaking amounts of rainfall over that time period. And currently where Hawaii is at is that there is no funding currently to help Hawaii throughout this natural disaster. And the community is solely depending on local community support and any donations to local organizations. So this was definitely a Mercury retrograde that hit the island hard, which is what is my now home. And it impacted the power, the resources, the people. People are struggling now. There's a big mess to clean up. It's going to take months for people to recover from this, and especially the people that were affected by it. It's going to take it can take them, even longer than that to recover, years, depending on what their circumstances are. So there has been an estimated damage of over $1 billion with the media not really covering this, the media suppressing natural disasters that were happening in the United States during this Mercury retrograde. There were wildfires in Nebraska, there was flooding in Hawaii, and very little media coverage. And so, even with Hawaii depending on donations to local organizations, without that media coverage, there's not been a lot of support for Hawaii. So, I'm doing my due diligence. I obviously love Hawaii. I care about those people that were deeply affected by this. And I'm going to link some um, local organizations in my description box so that you can possibly check that out and see how you may be able to support Hawaii from afar if you are listening to this from long distance. And if you are here living on the island, you obviously were a part of the experience. Hopefully, you did okay throughout the storms. Personally, I did okay through the storms, but I had friends and I've also seen other people dealing with damages and dealing with a mess, to deal with. So my heart goes out to you and wherever you're at and however you're recovering, and hopefully we can all come together and chip in and help in some way for that, for this recovery process. It was, uh, you know, likely traumatizing for some people. So, okay, back to astrology. That was just like a window into Mercury retrograde eclipse season and, how it can just be um, significant to see not just a Mercury retrograde during eclipse season, but to also see that that Mercury retrograde was happening in a sign of its fall. This kind of for astrologers really points out a transit. It's eclipse season, there's a Mercury retrograde happening, Mercury is in its fall. This is where astrologers can look at that objectively and say, yeah, this looks difficult, this looks challenging, this looks like it could be messy, this looks like it could be confusing, this looks like it could create a lot of fog or chaos in some way, a type of crisis in some way. And in this case, a crisis that feels very ungrounded, a crisis that feels very unstable, right? So that is kind of where we're at collectively, energetically. Um, Let's bring it into Aries season now. So in Aries season, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So it's kind of like a new year. This is the beginning of an astrological year. It's occurring in the springtime in Northern Hemisphere. And so it is kind of like that first burst of energy, kind of like a sprout bursting through the ground or like a spark going off or a rocket ship going off. It's Aries season is typically feels like maybe a burst of energy where we're initiating something, we're starting something, and we're also tuning into who we are as individuals. What makes you an individual? What makes you an individual is that you have your own preferences, you have your own values, you have your own needs and desires. You want something. This is what makes you an individual. It's what creates an identity that you have. Now, I'd say typically in Aries season, people usually are waiting for this like boost of energy, like, yeah, I'm going to get something done. It's going to be direct. I'm going to start something new. I'm going to, um, get something started that's important for my dreams and my desires. But this Aries season is different and it's going to be different. Aries season is going to be different moving forward. Now, Saturn's going to be transiting Aries, for a couple years. I don't have the exact date, but usually Saturn transits through a sign every 2.5 years or so. And then we have Neptune in Aries, and Neptune usually transits a sign anywhere from like 12 to 14 years. So we're talking about a long transit here. Aries season is going to be very different for a while now. The thing about this Aries season is that we have Saturn and Neptune in a close conjunction. Now, this is a major outer planetary event which means that it has global implications. And while we were kind of edging up to this Saturn and Neptune conjunction, we've seen lots of global themes occurring. We've seen the release of the Epstein files, something that was hidden that gets revealed. We've also seen, the attempt of massive cover-ups, in our systems, in the government. We've also seen, wars or conflicts breaking out. Um, that involve oil, that involve resources, that involve, quite honestly, like religious wars, like holy wars, people that are going into conflicts with a religious kind of attitude, religious purposes. Um, like Christian nationalism has been on the rise. And so we see these themes coming up to the surface. We see these themes, we see themes of confusion and fear, things that are dissolving, things that are coming together, things that are being seeded at this time that are going to play out over the next 36 years. We're seeing a lot of that and bringing it back down to us, the sensitive leaders that are here. This is a time where you may have been considering what the heck is my role, in this world right now? Like the world is going through a reconstruction. We are restructuring a global system. You know, we are letting an old world kind of collapse or die or dissolve or be exposed. And we are starting to have to, go through the reckoning of showing up, doing the work, and installing new leadership and restructuring systems and, initiating kind of a new global system. And on top of that, we have the rise of technology. And on top of that, we have the rise of conflict and power struggles. And so it is like a crisis of transformation in humanity. It is a lot happening, right? And this was an outer planet activation that occurred, a conjunction. That conjunction happened in February, and Aries season is kind of the month where we are having a lot of activations around this conjunction. This conjunction is still pretty close. It's 3 degrees apart from each other. And so every time we have a planet that moves into um, Aries, it conjuncts Neptune and then it conjuncts Saturn. And Neptune, first of all, is that planet when you have a planet conjuncting Neptune, a lot of times that can feel like a fogginess that starts to come over you when you're sensitive to energy, when you're here to be a part of the new world, to be one of the leaders of the new world, the creatives of the new world, the healers of the new world, the teachers of the new world, the people contributing to the new systems of the new world. Like there can be kind of experiences of releasing things dissolving within you, like old structures within you, old identities, old things that just need to dissolve. Like the energy can just get blah. You can kind of feel the release and the maybe even the exhaustion as these planets conjunct Neptune. And we kind of get hit with, on a practical level, personally, we get hit with these ideas. We might get these ideas, we might get a vision, we might have some kind of imagination or ideal about what we are here to do as individuals, who we are, where we play a role in the collective, what the heck we're supposed to be doing while we're here right now during this time. And we might come into some kind of ideal or vision or kind of spiritual illumination around that. We might experience heightened creativity during that time. And then we get a reality check, as things start to come into conjunction with Saturn. We get kind of the sobering, grounding kind of reality check of, and this is my current circumstance, and this is where I'm at, and this is what I'm working with, and I am restricted on some level, and I have to do the work without immediate results, and I have to make this work, and I have to build this, and I have to do that, and I have to commit to this. And this is the way I can embody it. This is what I need to do to embody it. And so Aries season can take on kind of a very non-linear experience of whimsy and wispiness and fog and our ideals and connecting to our dreams and kind of like the alignments that are occurring spiritually for us. And then boom, 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 we get hit with like having to kind of embody it and the challenge of embodying that. And then when we go to embody it, we're like, oh, this is not as easy as I thought it would be. I have this pattern, I have this wound, I have this trust issue, I have this confidence issue, I have this insecurity issue, I have this thing going on, that's affecting who I am and my ability to, embody, this purpose, this thing that I'm wanting to manifest in my life, this dream, this alignment, this direct alignment with what I'm here to do and create and kind of pioneer or lead in my life or start in my life. And that's kind of like the tone of Aries season right now. It's not your typical Aries season, which brings me to this full moon. When we're in Aries season, we are focusing a lot more on who we are and what makes us who we are, our preferences, our values, our needs, our desires, and how we make that happen. How we get that started, how we do that. And then we have a Libra full moon during Aries season, which just means the moon is opposite the sun and it is a moment of rebalance during the zodiac season. In this case, Libra is the opposite sign of Aries. So the full moon will be in Libra, and we are rebalancing the tension between us as individuals and relationships. How we show up for relationships, the other person, us as individuals, and the other person. And so a full moon in Libra can illuminate our relationships. It can illuminate many different themes, but some of the themes that it can illuminate, one is relationships. How are we showing up in our relationships? How is someone else's experience of who we are? Are we being diplomatic enough in our relationships? Have we thought about the other person or considered the other person? Um, are we listening to different perspectives? Are we gathering different information before we make judgments, before we make decisions, before we come to, yeah, a decision about our choices in life, our relationships, what we do, um, how we navigate things? So we could be weighing some things out, leading up to this full moon. We could be weighing out a decision. We could be doing some rebalancing, bringing some awareness to something that feels out of balance in a relationship. Maybe you're a little too much, focused on yourself, or maybe you're overly focused on someone else, and you need to balance out the tension between you and someone else. Maybe there's a relationship rebalancing going on. Maybe there's a rebalancing going on in general within you between your own masculine and feminine energy. Maybe there's like a rebalancing going on in your heart, in your relationship space, the way you relate to men, women, the masculine, the feminine, how you allow that to express through you. Is that in balance? Maybe it's a balance around your own abundance and like the reciprocation. Are you just giving and giving and not receiving? Or are you um, always receiving and never giving? Do you notice issues with the reciprocation in your relationships? We have the full moon in Libra at 12 degrees. Libra is a cardinal sign. It's kind of like a leadership energy. It's really good at being diplomatic and bringing, like diplomacy and in peace and harmony to relationships, like smoothing out the ruffles, showing up very gracefully socially. I want to say first that this is a full moon that is an expansion in our hearts and in our relationships. This is a growth period for our relationships, this full moon. And the reason why I say that is because we have Jupiter squaring the sun and the moon during this full moon. Now, Jupiter is a benefic planet, which means it generally is associated with positive things like abundance and good fortune and luck and opportunities and growth and expansion and um, optimism, and so we might have to be cultivating more optimism in our relationships. We might need to be like actively growing, how we feel safe in relationships, the emotional security in our relationships, the sensitivity in our relationships, how we heal in our relationships. We might be coming to a decision in our relationships. We might be processing something about our relationships that requires more growth, more expansion. In this case, we have the full moon opposing Saturn and Neptune. Now, this is kind of a wide opposition to Neptune. So something can come into focus around this time that is more grounding or practical or sobering in our relationships. With this opposition here, this is kind of the weird energy I'm sensing. Like, is there some kind of strange thing happening in our relationships where we are having some kind of ideal about what a relationship should look like? Do we have a relationship ideal of who we should be or the role we play in relationships or how our relationships should treat us? Do we have like an idealistic perspective going on about or belief systems going on or judgments going on in our relationships? And where are we being sobered around that? Where are we saying, oh, I'm a human being with limitations. I'm a human being that, doesn't have infinite amount of patience, or I'm a human being that doesn't have infinite amount of resources or infinite amount of time, or I'm tired, I'm burnt out, or, maybe there's limitations we're dealing with in our relationships that are asking us to grow. Can we can we kind of burst the bubble of idealism in our relationships where we're kind of in a fog in our relationships, maybe expecting or judging people based off our ideals? And can we get actually more mature and grounded and responsible in our relationships and kind of take accountability and grow and, you know, take initiative, but also be emotionally sensitive and intelligent, as well as being diplomatic and fair and balanced? Can we get our needs met while being diplomatic and balanced? Can we negotiate and kind of work through some of our projections and our ideals and our relationships and kind of maybe create some structure. This is an opportunity to not just to grow in our relationships, but to create some structure in our relationships that supports our desires, that supports our needs, that supports what is fair and balanced in our relationships, that supports the give and take in relationships. The full moon in Libra is ruled by Venus. Now, the good news about this full moon is that Venus is going to be in Taurus. And that means Venus will be at home in Taurus, which means this full moon, even though we have this kind of growth coming through, the sobriety coming through, the practicality coming through in this full moon, we're going to be resourced. We're going to have what we need to kind of manage or yeah, like manage what's happening around this full moon, whether it's for us personally or in our relationships around a decision or around, something rebalancing in your life at this time. And, Venus and Taurus, this is an energy of enjoying the beauty in one another, seeing the beauty in one another, being more grounded and stable and steady in our relationships, enjoying the simple pleasures of life, like food and music and resting and going and, enjoying nature and um, having a sense of self-worth in our relationships, having a sense of financial security in our relationships, having a sense of stable foundations in our relationships. This is the energy of Venus and Taurus. And so we're going to be more resourced around this full moon. And Venus is making a trine to Virgo, to the South Node in Virgo. And it's also making a square to Pluto. So this is where things are a little, intense. Like this full moon, the period around this full moon, like the days before and after the full moon, might have some challenge to it because the square with Pluto is going to expose something deeper in our relationships. It can expose deeper psychological or emotional patterns in our relationships. It can expose psychological issues in our relationships. It can expose secrets, games, power struggles, things that have been hidden. It can expose it. And the reason why it's exposing it is because it can turn into like a healing alchemy. It is an opportunity to take your power back. It's an opportunity to let go of old patterns that are not, helping your relationships, not improving your relationships. With the trine to the South Node, we might be getting exposed to some of our relationship shadows during this time. We might be kind of taking our power back, coming into more self-worth, working through abundance issues in our relationships or the reciprocity in our relationships, the balance in our relationships. But we have the ability to draw on discernment. We have the ability to draw on refinement, order, organization, our daily routines that can support our relationships at this time. And we can use those gifts of Virgo to support us, in our relationships at this time. Where can we draw on order and organization and daily routines and practices like relationship practices? And where can we refine things and improve things? Where can we also release the tendencies to be too harsh and critical on each other? Maybe we're being too harsh and critical on each other. Maybe we're, just going back to that whole thread that I was talking about where maybe there is a theme going on right now collectively or personally where we have some kind of veil that's fogging our perception of our relationships and who we are. Maybe we have this kind of veil or this fog or this idealism around our relationships and who we are and who we think our partners, our friends, our family, our coworkers, our bosses are supposed to be or supposed to act or supposed to behave. And maybe this is a time where we kind of grow up. This is a maturing full moon. This is a maturing full moon for our masculine energy. We are maturing, with Saturn and Aries. This is a maturing process for Aries. I mean, we're not just like going out there and starting something. We're not just going out there. We're building a freaking identity. We're building who we are. We're building our dreams. We're embodying who we are. We're embodying our dreams. This is a spiritually maturing process, right? And so this full moon definitely brings that up. It's going to expose that those shadows that we need, those fears and those shadows in our relationships that probably contribute to a low sense of self-worth, um, where we don't see the beauty in our relationships and other people. Um, and we really have the opportunity to innovate and kind of maybe combine our visions, our goals, and have a vision for our relationships, have like a be willing to have a different way of looking at your relationships, a unique way of looking at your relationships. Um, and honestly, during this full moon, the challenge is to remain objective and detached because it could be psychologically intense, it could be emotionally intense, it could be like old trauma coming into the surface. It could be old shadows coming to the surface, power games coming to the surface, secrets. It could be, psychologically, emotionally intense. And the challenge is to be objective. The challenge is to be detached, objective, and almost kind of scientific in your approach to relationship healing or relationship growth, and really looking at how can you be practical, how can you purify, refine, improve, include daily practices to to allow this growth in your relationships. This growth isn't necessarily happening for you. It requires your surrender and trust it requires you to surrender to the process, follow your intuition, trust the process, um, believe in your intuition, and allow some growth to occur in your hearts, in your relationships, in your choices. But during this full moon, with all that said, during this full moon, Jupiter still touches the full moon and brings its blessings. Like, this isn't just, nitty gritty, awful, like messy, bad, sucky kind of growth that's happening in our relationships. This is the type of growth that keeps on giving. It brings you more abundance. It brings you more self-worth. It brings you more blessings. It brings you more security. It brings you more beauty. It brings more, right? So it's the type of growth that is worth it. Um, and so that's where I want to essentially wrap up. This ultimately brings up a tension between self and others, making decisions, rebalancing relationships, exposing something that's hidden, and refining our relationships and overall allowing some expansion to happen, some growth to happen in our relationships where we have more emotional security, more connection through the heart, more of a safe space, as well as it being diplomatic and as well as you being able to get your needs met. And so one of the visions that came to me around this full moon is is kind of like when, let's say you have this need, like let's say you have this need to put together a puzzle on a table and you're putting together this puzzle, and maybe you really need to put together this puzzle because it's helping you relax, or it's helping you um, process something, or maybe it's a puzzle that you want to hang on your wall, like as a piece of artwork. There's a purpose that you have around putting this puzzle together on your table. It means something to you. You want it, you need it, you're doing it because, it's important to you, right? And then let's say you have a little child that comes around the table and you're almost done with the puzzle. And then all of a sudden, this child starts to shake the table, the puzzle, half of the puzzle falls off the table. And, now, most of the puzzle that you put together has fallen apart. And there's that frustrating moment, um, or that sobering moment, or that kind of heavy, difficult moment of like, man, like, I can't really blame this person. I can't really make them the problem. I can't judge this person. They're just a child. They don't know what they're doing. They're just trying to have fun. They had no idea. They interrupted my puzzle and disrupted my puzzle making process. And in some ways, I can't, you know, take it out on this person. I can't blame them. I can't really hold them accountable. There's a different issue going on here. Like, and this is like maybe you're a mother and you're trying to put together this puzzle. Maybe there's all of a sudden that moment of sobriety where you're like, okay, it's going to be harder to get my needs met because I'm a mother and I have this child and things happen, and it's making it even more difficult, for me to get the things that I want to accomplish done, and to do that in a way that's smooth and works for me because I have this child that kind of keeps interrupting me and keeps disrupting me. And so that's kind of the sobriety moment. Like, there's something that could come into illumination for you where it's like, like this is the way I thought it would be. This is what I want to do. This is the purpose that I have. This is me trying to, put energy into this purpose that I have. And then we have this sobriety moment of like, And this is the way it is. These are the limitations that I have. This is the practical nature of life. These are the real things that I'm dealing with that are, causing a type of disruption or issue or limitation on what I'm trying to do. And this is the moment where you can get creative. You could innovate. You could go deeper and you could think, well, what structure can I put in place to help me as in this situation? In the example I was giving as a mother, it's like, well, what kind of structure could I put into place to help me? Maybe I put together my puzzle when my child is sleeping in the bed, or maybe I schedule a babysitter, and when my babysitter is here, I can go put together my puzzle, when someone else is watching my child. Or maybe I carve out 1 hour a day where, I have someone else helping with the child and I do it. There can be so many different ways we draw on routine or practice or boundaries to help us, so it's to support our needs, and to also be mature about the limitations that we're dealing with. Um, and so we could be thinking about that around this full moon. Like, what is some structure we can put into place that supports me in this environment or in this situation? Because we can't just, like this full moon, it could be easy to judge someone else. It could be easy to point your finger at someone else and blame them. It could be easy to make someone else the problem. It could be easy to project onto someone else and kind of expect them to meet this ideal situation for you. These are tendencies that could be happening around this full moon where you could grow and you could say it's actually not about judging other people or blaming other people or or even being disappointed in other people. It's really about creating structure, creating boundaries, creating the daily routines that I need so that things are accomplished for me, so that I can accomplish what I desire to accomplish in my daily life. That's kind of what we're working through, but it does require us to look at our own deep stuff. What's going on beneath the surface? What's going on psychologically? What's going on energetically? What's going on around our karma? What's going on around secrets? What's going on with things that need to be exposed so that we can, create a routine that actually supports not just you, but also relationships, also other people. That's kind of like the full moon, the summary of the full moon. And I wanted to bring in some practical wisdom here around relationships. If something comes up with relationships for you, maybe something intense or something that needs to be worked through, one of my favorite wisdoms in a um, conversation, with someone else is to practice hearing them. Um, obviously, like listening to someone else is is very important. A lot of people sit there when someone else is talking and they think about what they're going to say, or they're thinking about their side of the story, or they're thinking about their reaction to what someone just said, but they're not actually listening or hearing the other person. And then some people listen to the other person, they're really listening, but they immediately respond back to that person with their opinion, their response, and the other person doesn't feel heard. And so this can create a situation where people just don't feel heard. They're talking, talking, talking. They're not listening, or they're not hearing, or they don't feel heard. And this is a big problem in relationships. So one of the most simplest things that you can do when you are having an intense conversation with someone else is to slow down the conversation and to really listen, be present with what they're saying, let them say everything they need to say, and then reflect back to them what you just heard them say. You can summarize what they say, you can say exactly what you think they just said, but letting them know, this is what I heard you say. Let me just slow down this conversation for this moment and make sure I heard you. You just told me blah, 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 blah. Is that correct? And that person will say, yes, that's correct. I feel heard. Or, no, that's not correct. This is what I mean. And let me explain it more to you. And you will reflect back to them again. So, reflection is a really, really good tool to use in conversations to help you get through relationship intensity, relationship struggles. And another thing I want to mention about this full moon is because Venus is square Pluto, another thing that can happen is that we start to reveal our truth in our relationships. We start to reveal something that's maybe deeper, heavier. Maybe it's a truth, maybe it's a secret, maybe it's something that's vulnerable and scary, but maybe we have like the courage to finally say it or something. And it might be really intense to say it. It might be really intense for you to hear it as someone receiving it. So if that happens in a conversation, one of the things I encourage you to do is to, again, slow down the conversation. I think that is a really good resource that we have with Venus and Taurus is to slow down the conversation and to pause and say, thank you for letting me know. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for letting me know that that means that, that is important that you shared that. I really appreciate that you shared that. I'm thankful that you shared that to me. It means something to me. It's important to me. Letting someone know. Because as soon as they share something intense that's vulnerable, even if it hurts, even if it stings, even if it doesn't feel good, just them knowing that, okay, this person appreciates what I'm sharing. This person is receiving the feedback. They're not immediately getting defensive. They're not immediately, fighting with me about it. That's enough to help the conversation settle into a resolution, a solution, some clarity, a next step versus it steamrolling into like an intense, fight or break or, issue. Um, Another thing standing about this full moon and practical wisdom in relationships is, um, you know, making sure that when you're communicating, it's compassionate, it's forgiving, embracing forgiveness, compassion, where we can have empathy for someone else, where we can, um, protect each other's hearts, protecting each other's hearts, having intense discussions, exposing our truth, balancing out a relationship, getting your needs met in a relationship. This is a lot of growth. This is where a lot of growth is for a lot of people. This is not easy growth necessarily. It can be challenging. It can be good. It can be worth it. It can improve our lives in so many ways when we do it, but it can be hard. And this is kind of where I see it's important to, when you go into a conflict, if you go into a conflict, if you're working through a conflict, it's good to protect each other's hearts, like not just your own heart from feeling hurt, but your other person's heart. Like, how would you want to hear something from someone else if they had some truth or some secrets or some patterns or something vulnerable they needed to share with you? Like, how would you want to be treated in that scenario? Um, these are some of the things you can think about as we lead up to the full moon. Like really making sure that you preface a conversation can be a lot to making sure that conversation goes well. Like I want to have a conversation with you about this. And in this conversation, I just want you to listen. I don't want you to give me advice. Or in this conversation, I would like to tell you what is going on. And then I would like us both to find a solution. Or in this conversation, I'm going to tell you what's going on. And then I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do about it. You can preface these conversations and help them go much smoother. Easier said than done, especially on a day-to-day basis in the real world. Things can be activating, things can be triggering, but this is an opportunity for an expansion in our hearts, an expansion in our relationships, and to overall bring more balance in our lives. So wherever you have Libra ruling a house in your chart, wherever Libra rules a house in your chart, that is where you are coming into more balance in your life right now during this full moon, kind of a rebalancing occurring. All right. Before I let you go, I want to make some announcements. This is going to be a big month collectively. It's going to be another big month in the year 2026. It's going to be one of those months where, we might have more action occurring in the world that could feel confusing, could stoke more fear, confusion, and more of that, more of the stuff we've already been dealing with, but just it can be another big month. Okay. And I promise you things kind of do smooth out a little bit after the springtime. But yeah, Aries season can be another month that's a bit crunchy. And so I definitely always try to create group sessions each month that support us. And so this month, I've got a group energy healing about healing our masculine energy and dissolving blockages to embodying our deeper purpose. That's going to be on April 11th. And then I also am going to have a meditation, a live guided meditation about reclaiming your sense of self-trust and going beyond self-doubt. This is a big issue for so many people. Um, you end up going into phases where you invalidate yourself, you doubt yourself, you don't believe in yourself. And that is so, so, so important right now that you believe in yourself. It is so important right now for you to align with, a deeper sense of purpose or a higher sense of purpose or a new sense of purpose based on a new kind of identity that is forming right now that is meant for this new restructuring on a global level. So this is going to be a live guided meditation that helps you clear that, helps you clear the doubt, move beyond the doubt. And then I'll have a live channeled message on April 25th. And this is where I channel Yeshua or other ascended masters. And we love to talk about divinity. We like to talk about your divinity, how to come into union with your divinity, how to embody that, how to embody more of you, how to work with your divine qualities and gifts, how to be a divine human on earth right now through all of this stuff going on. So if you love working with divinity. You like those talks about the soul and soul senses and your soulful evolution, and you enjoy receiving potent messages that help you shift and align and expand and integrate and grow. That session is for you, and that's offered every single month. And then last announcement, I have a free class coming up on Thursday, April 9th. That's coming up soon. This is a free class for my Radiant Self program. If you are someone that needs to learn how to cleanse your energy, reset your energy, maybe you're craving a daily routine or a weekly routine or even just a monthly routine where you know how to ground yourself, you know how to cleanse your aura, you know how to make separations, energetic separations with other people after those interactions where they feel messy. Um, you want to learn how to, release entity attachments from your body. You want to learn how to replenish yourself, clear specific energies out of your body, clear specific limitations out of your body. Then this course is going to be just for you. In this course, you're going to learn self-healing, psychic, and energy tools that help you feel more calm, clear, and energized and connected to yourself. If you are a psychic sponge, this is going to be a course that is very important for you. If you are a psychic sponge and you don't know how to manage your energy, you need to take this course. The first class is free. There's no obligation to continue. However, it's super affordable to continue, and you are working with me live, one-on-one, where I can answer your questions and help guide you through each class. So it's a deal. It's transformative. It's amazing. I'm going to have that link in the description box below. Please join me if you would like some support with your energy or with your intuition. That class is where everyone starts. All right, everyone. It was a pleasure connecting with you. We have been through a lot this year so far, And if you enjoy watching these videos, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. If you're listening on YouTube, that's going to help me with the algorithm. Um, I'm pretty sure I'm shadow banned or something because I do currently do not have the algorithm on my side on YouTube. So if you would give me a big psychic hug, help me out by liking the video, commenting, sharing, um, subscribing, that would be great. If you're listening on podcasts, if you're listening on Spotify, please give this podcast a rating. Again, I love hearing from you. Let me know what's going on with you. Let me know how your Mercury retrograde went. Let me know if you're okay, if you had to go through the storms in Hawaii. Let me know where this full moon is happening for you, what house it's happening for you. If you tell me what house this full moon is happening for you, the house that's ruled by Libra, I can give you a little bit of insight into what this full moon might be bringing up for you, some of the themes that might be coming up for you. All right, sending you my love, my big psychic hug, and I will see you guys later. Take care. Bye.